Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be sharing a sad anniversary. Tomorrow, November the 4th, will mark the 30th anniversary of Yitzhak Rabin murder, the Prime Minister, the Israeli Prime Minister, and I want to remember sharing this article that has been written by a morning paper, Italian morning paper, Repubblica. This is the story. Yitzhak Rabin's murder, the day peace between Israel and Palestine died. 30 years ago, on November 4th, two shots in the back killed Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli Prime Minister who shook hands with Arafat, literary giant David Grossman, Dr. Joseph Klausner, the surgeon who tried to save the Prime Minister, journalist Meron Rapoport, director Amos Gitai, and close aide Yossi Beilin on the day that changed the destiny of the entire Middle East. Professor Joseph Klausner remembers everything about that day. I will never forget it until my last breath. He tells me in his office on the 7th floor of Ichilov in Tel Aviv, the largest hospital. The day the doctor will never forget is November 4th, 1995. Klausner, a world-renowned internist and oncologist, was then the head of surgery at the hospital. At 10:02 p.m., he was at home when he received a call. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin had arrived at the hospital. He had been shot and was in serious condition. His deputy, Motti Gutman, told him. It usually took me 35 minutes to get to the hospital by car, but that evening it took me 14. When I arrived, everyone was already in the operating room. It was full of the hospital's best doctors. They had opened his chest and abdomen to try to control his blood pressure. They thought he could make it, but I knew immediately that it was over. I was the head of the surgery, so it was up to me to decide. I asked Gutman to stop, but he didn't want to, and neither did the others. They were hoping for a miracle. I told again to stop, and as soon as they turned off the machines, it was clear to everyone that Rabin was already dead. It was 11:02 p.m. 8 minutes after the shooting. I saw surgeons throwing themselves to the ground, crying, collapsing with their heads in their hands. It's not uncommon to witness a tragedy in the operating room, but I've never seen anything like this. Dr. Klausner sighs and looks up at the sky. He doesn't like journalists, but he makes an exception with me because he says he loves Italy. When he looks down again, his eyes fill with tears. I'm crying now because I couldn't then. It was up to me to take control of the situation. The day he whispered softly, I realized that the death I was certifying would have a huge impact on the country. What I could know was how long what I couldn't know was how long that impact would last, or how deep it would be. The end is a beginning. 30 years have passed since Yigal Amir, a 25-year-old law student, supporter of my Kahan's far-right Karch party already outlawed for its racist and violent idea and supporter of the settler movement, changed the course of history in Israel and in the Middle East. With 3 shots from a Beretta, 2 bullets hit Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in the back, killing the man behind the Oslo Accords and a handshake with Yasser Arafat, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate and a former general who chose the path of peace. Rabin had just finished speaking in Tel Aviv at what has then called Kings of Israel Square during a large gathering of the Peace Front. With Rabin, that day also marked the end of the dream for a different Israel, one willing to make painful compromises to reach an agreement with the Palestinians. His torch was passed to the foreign minister, also a Nobel Peace Prize, Shimon Peres, but his government lasted only 6 months. In the May 1996 election, a young ambitious leader led the right to a narrow victory. His name was Benjamin Netanyahu, and that victory began an era that would see him become the longest service prime minister in the country's history. The anniversary Israel is about to mark is unlike any other. It comes worn out and scarred from 3 years of internal conflicts, first debating the pros and cons of judicial reform, then the shock of October the 7th and the Gaza war. But most of all, it stands isolated on trial for the atrocity carried out in Gaza in response to the Hamas attack, a nation that can no longer see the other, let alone find common ground with them, as Rabin once did. We have no more words. It hurts to say it, but that day, Yigal Amir decided the history of an entire country, says David Grossman, the last remaining member of a generation of a literary giant who in different way tied their destinies to Rabin's dream. He, along with Amos Oz and Abraham J. Shoha, it's very difficult to pronounce. J. Shuha, who passed away a few years ago. Grossman, like Dr. Klausner, remembers everything about that evening. When he talks about it like the doctor, he doesn't just recount it, he relieves it. I was in the square with tens of thousands of people. I left before the end because I didn't want to get stuck in traffic on my way back to Jerusalem. I turned on the radio in my car. Shortly afterward, they said they had been shot, that someone had been shot. I was working at the radio station at that time. From the tone of my colleagues, I immediately understood that something serious had happened. The way they were talking was strange, too strange. I had just entered my house when the announcement came. Rabin was dead. I remember that I started crying. I cry very rarely, but that evening I cried. And I wasn't the only one. The house was filled with the people. Everyone was crying. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis were in tears. Those who were in the square, like Grossman, and others who had not gone, but understood that this death changed everything. The assassination created a divided world, right and left, religious and secular, writers, American journalist Dan Apron in Killing a King, his book dedicated to Rabin's death. The rift has never been repaired since then. And that is now called Rabin Square. The wound still bleeds. The huge esplanade in the heart of Tel Aviv is scared by the construction of the light rail, which has been ongoing for years. But if you walk past it and cross the parking lot where Amir, the assassin, waited in the starved for 40 minutes, 4 meters from the Prime Minister's car. 4 by 40 is the code for the most notorious mistake that Shin Bet, Israel Internal Security Service, has been teaching its agents ever since. You are confronted with images of that evening played on a loop on a screen in front of Rabin's bust. Noah singing, Rabin speaking, the applause, then the confusion, the tears, and the candles in this place. Yitzhak Rabin was killed in the battle for peace, reached the plaque. A few meters away, at the exact spot where Amir fired, there is an expanse of a black stone surrounded by Israeli flags, and a wall covered with graffiti and photographs. The handshake between Rabin and Arafat, Clinton's smile, the Nobel Peace Prize, images of a future that became the past before it even became the present. Yitzhak Rabin did not belong to any party, but he was close to the followers of Kach, who for months had been accusing the Prime Minister of treason for seeking agreement with the Palestinians. On October 6, 1995, the right wing organized a large protest in Jerusalem. On that occasion, the Prime Minister's car, he was not inside, was attacked by the crowd who tore the emblem off the armored Cadillac before the driver managed to drive away. If we've come this far, we can get to Rabin, said a 19-year-old Catch supporter showing the logo on television. His name was Itamar Ben-Gvir, and today is the Minister of Internal Security in Netanyahu's government. A man who never condemned Rabin's assassination, instead rather repeatedly defended those who had called for it, even going so far as to request the release of Amir, who is serving a life sentence. This is one of the reasons why so many of us struggle to find words. Grossman concludes, heartbroken. Gasoline on fire. In Israel, everyone remembers where they were on the evening of November 4, 1995, in a small street leading to the square, with my son on my shoulders, replies Meron Rapoport, now editor-in-chief of the progressive website Local Call. Without hesitation, I want to go to the rally, but not in the chaos. At one point, I went to my parents' house, which was nearby there. I heard the news on the radio. I left the child and ran to work. There is one detail that Rapoport cannot forget. I was working at Yediot Aronot. I remember the editor saying that morning that we didn't have any big news in the paper. I replied, don't worry, someone will be killed at the rally tonight. I never thought it would be Rabin. But the atmosphere was very tense. It was clear that the tension would explode. Adding fuel to the fire was the opposition leader and head of the Likud party, 40-year-old Netanyahu. On the evening of the attack of the Cadillac, he spoke at a rally, once again condemning the Oslo Accords. That to Rabin, we will drive him out with fire and blood, shouted the crowd. The future Prime Minister did not bat an eyelid, did nothing to calm the spirits. Because of this, when Rabin was killed, no one thought Netanyahu could survive politically. The entire right was in the dock. Consensus for peace seemed impossible to undermine. I want to believe that we will wake up from this nightmare to a better world, said his widow, Leah, a week after her husband's death. There is no alternative to a compromise between Jews and Arabs, wrote Amos Oz in the same time. What if? They were both wrong. The suicide attack carried out by Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in the following weeks changed everything. In May, Netanyahu won the elections. The seed of violence were already there, says the filmmaker Amos Gitai, who is dedicating the show to Rabin tonight in Tel Aviv. A stage adaptation of 24 hours leading up the assassination, where Rabin was elected. There was great euphoria, but at the same time there were terrorist attacks all over the country. Hamas and Jihad placed bombs in buses 50 meters from here, in the heart of Tel Aviv. And this dialectic weakened Rabin's position. Hamas, Fatah, Islamic Jihad, they all bear responsibility for Rabin's killing. They didn't kill him physically, but they contributed to weakening of his position. Still, the chance for peace until then was real, explained former Minister Yossi Beilin, the enfant prodige of the Rabin government, the architect of Oslo, the man who, together with Abu Mazen, had developed a roadmap that addressed all the outstanding issues. I had an appointment with Rabin to present the plan to him. Perhaps it would not have been the definitive solution, but I'm certain it would have been the basis for the definitive solution. He tells us today, Rabin's death was the worst thing that could have happened to Israel. He changed history forever, leaving us here wondering what would have been if. At Rabin Square today, that if feels real, it is a tangible reality. It takes less than 10 minutes to reach Hostage Square from here, the site of Israel's most recent nightmare on October 7, 2023. 1,200 dead, 151 kidnapped. This was followed by the war in Gaza, which resulted in 67,000 deaths. Would we have reached that point anyway if someone had stopped Yigal Amir 30 years ago? Today, more than ever, Israel is asking itself that question. And this is the interesting article I want to share with you because, I want to also to remember this hero, Yitzhak Rabin. Thank you so much for watching.